Most of us know her as the Unsinkable Molly Brown, but today we will learn about the real woman behind the Hollywood persona. Her name was Miss Margaret Brown, and it wasn't until after her death that she was actually referred to as Molly. She grew up in poverty, which helped shape her belief that it was the responsibility of the wealthy to help others in need. Philanthropy was her passion, and fighting for others her calling. She truly was unsinkable in every definition of the word, and today she becomes our very first Fairest of Them All. With our current world being overrun by so many rotten people, I wish to help balance it out by adding some who were inspirations of their time and still are today. So don your finest attire and let's learn all about this marvelous lady who helped create a better world for us all. Magic mirror on the wall. Who is the fairest of them all? Hi, hello, and howdy, my darlings, and welcome to the new and improved Rotten to the Core podcast. Here, we examine all of the worst people in our history, current and past, as well as some of the best examples of humanity, all to help us gain a better understanding of our world and, hopefully, ourselves. All to help us gain a better understanding of our own history, ourselves, and hopefully walk away with some tools to help others. I am your host, the not-so-evil queen, Ravenna Revenge, and I will be your guide through the looking glass. Rotten to the Core isn't just a podcast. For me, it's an avenue of creativity, community, and empowerment, and I wholeheartedly appreciate you joining me on this journey. I recently had the opportunity to visit Margaret Brown's former home on a trip to Colorado to speak at CrimeCon. If you're ever in Denver, I really recommend paying a visit. There's even a gorgeous bookstore about 6 miles away. It used to be an old playhouse, and even better, Margaret probably attended some shows there. There's also a really good cafe inside, and that never hurts either. I picked up a new book on tarot and a couple fantasy smut novels for me and my bestie. After we left, we went on the short ride to Molly's former home. And even upon parking, the sight of those reddish bricks paired with black accents gives you a feeling of excitement. You'll know you're in the right spot, too, if you see a big Sphinx statue with its pert and perky titties. We should all be so lucky. It was by far the best tour I think I've ever been on. The house was impeccable from the inside out, and our tour guide was knowledgeable, and her passion and love for Margaret was unmatched. You could just feel it emanating from her. Just how much Molly inspired her and everyone else there. Her voyage on the RMS Titanic is what made her famous, but Margaret Brown was so much more. So, let's give her flowers and learn all about this daughter of Irish immigrants who grew to become an unsinkable, unforgettable, and undeniable shero, and our very first Fairest of Them All. She was born Margaret Tobin on July 18, 1867 in Hannibal, Missouri. A far cry from her luxurious accommodations on the Titanic, that's for sure. Her parents, John and Johanna, like I said, were Irish immigrants, and Maggie, her familial nickname, was one of 6 children. Now, Molly didn't grow up in wealth by any means. As a kid, she even had a job stripping tobacco leaves at a local company in Hannibal. That was when she wasn't reading, daydreaming, or attending grammar school. She loved to read and took advantage of every opportunity. As she got older, Molly's life took a major turn when her brother moved to Colorado to start working at a mine. While he was there, he wrote to his sister about all the wealthy men who were just looking for a wife. So when Molly was 18, she took advantage of the opportunity and moved to Leadville, Colorado. Upon arriving, Molly found a job in the carpet and drapery department at a local mercantile. It didn't take her long to find a man, though. The mines were so overrun with testosterone, it must have been like shooting fish in a barrel. Molly was quite a catch, too. She was bright, beautiful, and fearless. And while Molly was enticed to move to Colorado by the thought of marrying into wealth, she appears to have found genuine love and connection. She forgoes all the already rich men and finds herself one who shares her passion for helping others. His name was James Joseph Brown, also JJ. They met in the summer of 1886 and were married by September 1st. You notice how nobody had long engagements back then. They usually were married the year they met, and I find that crazy. At the beginning of their marriage, they lived in JJ's small cabin in Leadville. And there is where they welcomed their children, Lawrence in 1887 and Catherine in 1889. As well as their own children, Molly and JJ also took in their nieces, Grace, Florence, and Helen Tobin, after the death of their mother in 1903. Molly welcomed the girls into her home with open arms and treated them as her own children, giving them all the same opportunities and love. I think that really showcases Molly's heart. We often hear of relatives taking in their kin throughout history, but more often than not, they're treated as servants rather than family members. I mean, hell, think of Cinderella. Poor thing. In her free time, Molly joined the Colorado chapter of the National American Woman Suffrage Association. She volunteered in soup kitchens to help feed the families of the struggling miners. Now, how did Molly come into her wealth and gain the title, as Rose's mother stated in the movie? New money. Sheer luck, in all honesty. Or, as I like to believe, a little bit of fate. At the time, Leadville was in the middle of a depression, and JJ was the superintendent of all the ibex mining properties. They had previously been mining silver, but it was quickly drying up. JJ had a feeling, though, that there was more than just silver in those mines. He had a hunch that gold was buried further down, and he devised a way for them to get it. Previously, there was too much sand for them to dig down deeper, past the levels where the silver was. JJ devised a way using timber and hay bales to actually build barriers in the sand so miners could dig deeper. He took a risk, and it paid off. There weren't just a few gold nuggets under that sand. Thanks to his idea, by October of 1893, the Little Johnny mine was shipping over 135 tons of gold ore a day. Because of his risk and ingenuity in leading the mines to such success, JJ was given 12,500 shares of stock and a seat on the board, instantly making him one of the most successful and richest men in the country. It would appear that Molly's foresight paid off. Not only did she choose love over money when she married JJ, but now she had more than enough to do both. I love that for her. She didn't waste any time putting their new wealth to good use either. Molly joined a local women's club that advocated for literacy, education, suffrage, and human rights. She also played a major role in the building of Denver's Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception, which you couldn't see from Molly's front porch. And she also helped to get the funding to build St. Joseph's Hospital. One of the things she did that really stuck out to me was her work with a man named Judge Ben Lindsay. Before Molly, any child, regardless of age, was tried as an adult for any crime. There was zero distinction before Molly fought to make changes. We can thank her and Judge Lindsay for starting the very first juvenile court that would eventually grow into the U.S. juvenile court system that we still use to this day. Honestly, after learning all about Molly Brown, I realized that her time on the Titanic was such an insignificant part of her life and all the wonderful things she managed to accomplish. Her life was literal goals, especially at that time. Molly then began taking literature, language, and drama courses at the Carnegie Institute in New York. And by the time she finished, Molly could speak at least 5 languages and get by with a few others. While in New York, Molly's wit and personality helped her make a few friends. By friends, I mean the country's wealthiest and most powerful families. Ever hear of the Vanderbilts and the Astors? Anybody else watching The Gilded Age? Oh my God, such a good show. Molly quickly charmed them all. She was one of the very first women to run for Senate, years before women could even vote in this country. A quote by Margaret Brown in 1914, "If I do go to the Senate, I shall be specifically interested in all matters relating to women and children. In general, I shall stand for the human side of every question." Wouldn't that be nice today? She eventually gave up her bid for the Senate and realized she could make more of a difference in the Red Cross as World War I began. And by 1920, with the passing of the 19th Amendment and the hard work of generations of women, including Margaret Brown, white women in the U.S. gained the right to vote. It would take until 1965, with the Voting Rights Act, that all women would have that deserved right. Can you believe that the rights of women to vote in this country are again even being put into question? To hear one male politician say anything about removing the rights of women to vote is a slap in the face to all the tireless efforts put forth by women like Molly Brown, and it sickens me to my innermost core. Now, Molly loved to travel. While Denver was her home, she would take every opportunity to see the world. Her house definitely showcased that passion too. There were things all over that she collected from all around the world, each piece personally selected by her and shipped back to be admired. Today, I do the same thing at TJ Maxx. By now, Molly was living life on the hog. She and JJ had divorced in 1909, but she was one of the wealthiest women in the country and spent much of her time traveling when she wasn't fighting for equality. In April 1912, Molly traveled with her daughter and John Jacob Astor with his family to Cairo, Egypt. They had all been traveling throughout Europe and planned to stay a while longer. But Molly received word that her grandson had taken ill. Being the sweetheart and good grandma she was, she decided to cut her trip short at the very last minute. She then left Egypt for France, where she booked passage on the very next ship headed to New York. And that ship just so happened to be the RMS Titanic. Can you believe that? She wasn't even supposed to be aboard the ship. She was just chilling in Egypt, having a gay old time. And we all know that a few days later, on April 10th, 1912, the Titanic struck an iceberg and sank. When the guests noticed something was up with the ship, the crew told them to go back to their rooms, put on their lifeboats, and wait. Molly was no fool, though, after she had been almost knocked to the ground by the jolt, and she had been on plenty of ships before to know something was up. So she went to her room, put on bundles of all of her warmest clothes and her furs, and donned her life jacket over them. She then put 500 in cash and a turquoise Egyptian ushapti in her pockets, something she probably bought while in Cairo. I actually have a replica of that same one she put in her pocket right here. It was given to me several, God, I don't even, 5, 6 Christmases ago by Chip Coffee, who said he was gifted it by Molly's granddaughter. And it's probably one of the most favorite things that I own. I think it's so cool. So she had something just like this in her little pocket and $500 cash. And while passengers scurried to get into the lifeboats, Molly held out. She was appalled at the treatment of the lower class passengers and fought to get all women and children on the lifeboats, regardless of their ticket. She even put her language skills to use by telling passengers what was going on. Eventually, Molly was forced into lifeboat number 6 and lowered into the ICC. And we all know what happened to the ship after. But the next day, the surviving passengers were rescued by the Carpathia. And that is where Molly really gained her popularity. At the time, the crew of the Titanic that survived all had contracts to work aboard. And as far as the White Star offices were concerned, when the ship sank, their contracts ended, essentially stranding all the crew who survived thousands of miles from home with no money, no belongings, and some not even being able to speak English. Well, that just wasn't going to fly with Miss Molly. By the time the Carpathia docked in New York, Molly had raised around $10,000 from all the wealthy passengers. She even started a survivors committee to help all the survivors get back home or find a place to live. She was the very last passenger to leave the Carpathia too, and she made sure that every survivor had a place to stay and a way to get back home. It is believed that she started the fund with the very $500 she had in her pocket, and the way she raised the rest of the $10,000 was not only brilliant, but it would have been scandalous at that time. She wrote and posted a list of every single wealthy survivor of the Titanic. If they donated money, she marked them as so. And the ones who didn't were highlighted and shamed by the other passengers. Eventually, almost all of them donated to the fund. This is the history tea I love. Old money would never. But thankfully, Molly was new money and had more than enough empathy and grit. Afterwards, Molly continued to travel extensively. She leveraged her newfound fame to promote important issues of the era: labor rights, women's rights, education and literacy for her children, as well as historic preservation. During World War I, her efforts shifted. She worked with the American Committee for Devastated France and assisted in the rebuilding of areas behind the front line and supporting wounded French and American soldiers. In 1932, she was awarded the French Legion of Honor for her overall good citizenship, which included her work during the war, her ongoing work in raising funds for Titanic victims and crew, her work with Judge Ben Lindsay on the Juvenile Court of Denver, and her relief efforts. She even took the stage and performed a few times in Paris. It was almost a happy ever after. But in September 5th of 1922, her ex-husband, JJ, passed away. And it kind of put her family in a sticky situation. Not only was she now grieving, even though they divorced, the two remained close. But the family was honestly expecting quite a large sum of money from JJ's estate. But like Molly, JJ had a love of philanthropy. And by the time of his death, He had literally given away his fortune to various charities. I mean, I know she had to been mad that he gave it away, but how you gonna be mad? He gave it away to charities. It could have been worse. At least it wasn't, a gold digger. He didn't spend it all gambling or drinking or anything sordid. He did something good with it, so you can't be that mad at the fella. Molly and the rest of the family were left with whatever money they had. But thankfully, Molly had invested wisely. And 10 years later, in 1932, when she died of a brain tumor, her net worth was between $1 to $2 million in today's money. Her long and fascinating life was now over, but her legacy lives on to this day. May we all have a life even half as grand as Margaret Molly Brown. So many kids wish to be a princess or a prince growing up. But wouldn't the world be so much more magical if we could all be more like Margaret Brown? Now let's do our little cleansing, and I'll let you be on your way, my dearest darlings. In darkness deep and troubles long, within my heart I carry song. Through life's most rotten days I stand my ground and make some waves. Though storms may strike and shadows fall, our spirit stands, unbowed by all. So be it. Never stand for injustice, nor fall for cheap ploys to divide us further. Use whatever tools, talents, and skills you possess to help. Whether it's calling your representatives, or like me, using your voice to spread light and tell the entire truth about all of the history of humankind. We will not go back into the shadows when there is more than enough sunlight for us all to grow. Thank you for supporting Rotten to the Core. Let's catch up again next time. And in the meantime, be happy, find some peace, and don't hurt anyone. I'd love to hear what you thought about today's episode and what lessons you learned on any of my socials. If you enjoy Rotten to the Core, please follow me on Instagram or join me on Patreon. Both of those are at It's Rotten to the Core. You can also listen to me on my other podcast, Mystery Inc., wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button and stay updated with our lessons. And if you have any ideas for future lessons, good or bad, please email me at mothman8myass@gmail.com. We have been making some changes to Rotten to the Core. Stay tuned for further lessons, Rotten Reddit, and my Behind the Mirror / Get Ready With Me on Patreon. I'm also under a new flagship called Myths and Malice, and I'll have a new episode for you out every Saturday. So I will talk at you next Saturday. I do appreciate you spending some time with me today and learning about Margaret Brown. Have a good evening, and don't do anything I wouldn't do.